Welcome to Paradise in the Pines, a podcast about the people, places, and stories that make this the home of American golf. Brought to you by the Pinehurst, Southern Pines, Aberdeen Area Convention and Visitors Bureau.
And hello again, everybody. Welcome to Paradise in the Pines. I'm Phil Wurz, President and CEO of the Pinehurst, Southern Pines, Aberdeen Area Convention and Visitors Bureau. And today we're thrilled to have Jaime Diaz join us from Golf Channel and Golf Central live from 40 years of golf journalism, number of accolades before joining Golf Channel, editor-in-chief of Golf World, senior writer for Golf Digest, 9-time Golf Writer Association of America award winner, Lifetime Achievement Award in journalism in 2012, recognized by Jack Nicklaus as a recipient of the Memorial Golf Journalism Award, and previously served as golf writer for the New York Times and Sports Illustrated. So Jaime Diaz, man, it's a pleasure and an honor to have you here today. Welcome to Paradise in the Pines.
Pleasure to be with you, Phil. This is a great setup you have here.
Thanks. Appreciate you taking time out. Now, you're from San Francisco, but believe it or not, folks, Jaime lives in Moore County. So what in the world made you go from San Francisco to Moore County? How long have you lived here?
We lived here now 17 years.
Wow,
yeah,
okay.
A while. It's just I'd always heard about Pinehurst, and it was sort of legendary in my mind. And I came here for the Tour Championship in 1991 when I was with the New York Times, and with a friend of mine who passed away recently, Tim Rosefort, and we stayed in a place right above, just downtown, just a nice little spot. And it was, I don't know, it was sort of idyllic, and I thought, this is wonderful. Yeah. My wife covered horse racing, and we had a couple of horses. The old race horses that had been given to her by trainers, and we thought, gee, this is an interesting spot, perhaps to have some land and also play some golf theoretically, which it's always been available to me, and it's been wonderful. I haven't played as much as I'd like to, but it's been a great chapter. It's been really nice to be down here. But I had many stops between San Francisco and here, but it's been a nice evolution to come here.
And you've seen this area change quite a bit now. I've been here 5 years. I've seen change. In 17 years, you've seen quite a bit of change. What do you think about? I mean, the big word here is growth in Moore County. So as a resident of Moore County, what do you think about the growth that's coming with USGA coming here, U.S. Open next year, more U.S. Opens, and more championships that were awarded recently?
Well, I'd say, the change is subtle here generally, but that's been dramatic. I think the USGA coming here is going to be transformative, especially with the golf community. It's really going to make it a mecca even more than it's been, sort of institutionalize Pinehurst as a center, which is really much like St. Andrews is over in Great Britain. So I think it's going to have all kinds of ripple effects that you're smart enough to understand, and I probably don't, but I'm sure you're very excited about it. But it's going to help all the retail. It's going to help all the restaurants, everything else. So I think Pinehurst will become even more of a spot.
Now, you're from San Francisco. You actually play golf. I was watching the research podcast you did with Gary Williams. Obviously, a lot of people recognize him from his days with Golf Channel and still in the golf industry, that you played on the golf team. So really, you and Bill Russell, the two biggest names at the University of San Francisco. So is that how you got involved in golf and eventually became a golf journalist, is just being involved in the game?
Yeah, my dad actually played soccer at University of San Francisco. Okay. He'd come from Spain. He was an immigrant, but they had a good soccer team back in the really early 50s. And Bill Russell was there when he was a freshman, so my dad actually saw Bill Russell at USF. My dad loved sports, loved athletics. And once soccer kind of ended and he was in this country, he started playing golf. And I started going to the golf course with him, Harding Park in San Francisco, Lincoln Park, when I was about 7, 8, 10 years old, whatever. And then I started working at the golf course, picking up the range, all those, those kind of Muni experiences, and that was my background in golf.
That's a heck of a Muni now.
Well, that one, I didn't work at that one, but that's a $250 Muni. But in any event, I was in the East Bay in Concord, and it was just, I grew up in golf, reading about golf, thinking about golf, trying to be good. Wasn't real successful at that, but it was fun to go to USF and play golf because they weren't really a great golf team at that time. I could play, I could go to school. It wasn't a scholarship situation,
right?
And just kept kind of golf in my blood, and then I started working at newspapers, but I wasn't covering sports. And then when I did get a chance, very fortunately, to go to Sports Illustrated, I started covering golf and tried to play more as far as just staying, I always feel like I'm more interested in the game when I do get a chance to play. You just get some of their selfish thoughts, in terms of, gee, that's interesting. How would I do that in my own game? But it becomes an idea that you can actually turn a story into, or maybe interview subject or something.
Now, fast forward to 2018, you joined Golf Channel. We see you on the channel. We see you on live from wherever the big event may be for that week, or the major championship. What's it like being with Golf Channel now and being able to be really at the forefront? Everybody, I watch Golf Channel. Everybody loves golf. That's the channel. What's it like to be on the set there with Rich Lerner and Brandel Chamblee?
I still feel like, I always will feel like a little over my head. I didn't come up to television as you did. You have the TV chops. I never really feel like I've got them.
Right.
So as long as they keep me in my niche and I talk about, areas that I'm familiar with, I feel a little more comfortable. But TV, I've gained nothing. And I always had a lot of respect for the guys who are good on TV. I just think it's one of the most direct, impactful mediums there is. When it's done well, it's probably the best. It's the one people absorb the best. And if you can do it well, like Rich can do it and Brandel can do it, it's really, it's kind of awe-inspiring to watch. But to be part of it, I just feel really lucky. And sometimes, it works out where you actually contribute in a good way. Yeah.
It's interesting because, being in TV, and you always want to have that lightning rod. If it was so vanilla, nobody would watch. You got to have this, and that's Brandel Chamblee. And I texted Jaime before we did this podcast saying, hey, we could probably do 30 minutes on Brandel, because he is that person who is very outspoken, very opinionated. However, with his opinions come a lot of facts and background. What's it like? What's behind the scenes to work with Brandel?
Well, it's impressive because he has lived the golf life at the very highest level just about his whole life. I mean, he was an All-American at Texas, really good. In fact, in his opinion, he was better then than he became as a pro, because he thought he got a little messed up with too much instruction. But he just is so knowledgeable and so observant and so naturally intelligent that he brings all those gifts to golf and immerses himself before every show and researches. I mean, just unrelentingly. He doesn't, he doesn't have like people aren't going to watch this show. He gives it everything for every show. He's just always ready. And he's always got ideas, and he comes in with new ideas. He's just, I think, just really stimulated by the opportunity to sort of be, I think, the lead spokesman on what's going on in golf. And you call him a lightning rod. I think he has strong opinions.
Yeah.
But they're backed up by facts. They're backed up by his research. They're backed up by conviction.
Right.
And I think people see that you can disagree, but it's not because he's uninformed.
And you got to respect that. I mean, he puts himself out there, but like you said, he backs it up. We just finished the season. Victor Hovland won the FedEx Cup. It's amazing how he was portrayed as being this guy that had no short game. And man, the guy is like, he must practice like crazy. I mean, obviously him. What is he like? Obviously, he's a tremendous player. He's a world champion. But what is he like as a person? What about his work ethic? Because he must have a strong one to be able to improve that short game.
Well, I think he has a tremendous attitude. I mean, he was very self-effacing about his short game 2 years ago. He said, I think the quote was, my short game sucks. And I think part of it's, growing up in Norway and learning a lot indoor golf from the internet, not necessarily playing a lot of golf in a formative stage, maybe when he was 10, 11, 12 years old. He wasn't hitting a lot of short game shots probably. And then he became such a good ball striker that, even like Jack Nicklaus would say, I really never worked on my short game like I should have, but I hit so many greens that it wasn't a priority. And Victor hit so many fairways and greens that, I don't say he thought he could get away with it. He just didn't prioritize it. Yeah. When he realized, if I want to get to the next level, this is what it's going to take. I mean, that's sort of, they talk about, the Mamba mentality. I think of the Tiger mentality. You make a weakness a strength. And you focus in a way that, absolutely absorbs new information, and you get to the point where you're just not going to accept mediocrity.
Right.
And he went with Joe Mayo, and he's got good technique now, and he just made it an opportunity as opposed to, this is drudgery, I'm not good at this. It was more like, I can get good. I'm learning. This is fun. I'm getting excited by this, and look what it's making me do as a player. It's helping him so much in terms of his tee to green game. He doesn't have any pressure on his irons now. He can go at pins and feel like I can get it up and down from a short-sided situation. And he's having fun spinning the ball and doing all this. He's made it. They always talk about how do kids learn. They learn when it's fun. Yeah. And Victor's made it.
He smiles a lot.
He smiles a lot. I'll tell you just a quick story. It's 2018 at the U.S. Open at at Pebble Beach, and I was going to be, which is very irregular. I was going to be on a charter flight with all the players because I had to interview Francesco Molinari and he would only do it at a certain time, and I could only get there if I took that charter. So Golf Channel, Courtney Holt, she's so connected. She got me on the flight. So I go to the airport, the private airport at Pebble, and I'm behind a fence. It's closed because I got there early. I want to make sure there was no complication if I was late at all. And this guy comes out finally and says, "Hey, back it up. I got to open the gate." So I just thought, I said, back it up. I back it up without even looking. I back right into Victor Hovland's car. Oh no! and Victor was low amateur that week. I didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
I get out very sheepishly. I'm very embarrassed. He's smiling, and he's still in the car. And I look at him. I say, I didn't really recognize him because I hadn't really covered him that much as the low amateur, even though he made a real good impression. He wasn't part of the main story. And I said, "Hey, I'm really sorry." He goes, "My name's Jaime," and he goes, "No problem, man. It's okay." I looked. I had broken my little taillight. His car was fine. And I said, "I didn't get your name." And I thought he said, I was sort of embarrassed. I thought he said Richard. And so I thought he was Richard all this time. Not all this time, but yeah, right. Who's this guy, Richard? Is he a player? And anyway, I find out that was Victor Hovland. And he's not. He's not a Richard.
That's a great story. Now, looking back on 2023, the season that was, what would you say were maybe the top story, the top three stories of the year?
Well, gosh, on the course, I think it's the delineation. I mean, off the course, it's maybe the biggest story ever, unfortunately, I think, is LIV Golf and the PIF and Saudi Arabia's money and the guys jumping and doing all kinds of, new, perhaps, the framework that they're going to try to merge in some form or another. That's the overriding story, but there's so many, it's so mysterious that it's hard to know where it's going.
Right.
Exactly. But no, I mean, it's transformative. And I worry that the golf product at the very top of the game won't be as compelling or as good if it's fragmented.
While we're still on that, do you think more guys will jump?
Well, here's how I look at it. If I am in the camp, certainly I'm supposed to be objective and I am, but I'm also a commentator. So I'm in the camp that the PGA Tour should, with whatever leverage they have, and leverage seems to be diminishing, fight hard on keeping the status quo as much as they can and making sure that the players who went to LIV don't get a lot of privileges that would intertwine with PGA Tour players.
World Golf ranking points.
World Golf ranking points, even Ryder Cup. I honestly was against Brooks getting picked. I know everybody said, well, he's so good, and okay, fine, but you're setting a precedent. You're leaving the possibility out there for people who are going to be considering this decision in the future possibly. Hey, look, if I can still play the Ryder Cup, if I can still get in the majors, and I'm going to make 5 times more than I'm making now,
right?
If I don't have a real conscience about the historical importance of the PGA Tour, why wouldn't I jump? So I feel like we've already learned the loyalty is not maybe as great as we anticipated, and more players will jump. And if it's a steady stream or a drip even, that I think can be really destructive to the structure of golf at the very highest level. I mean, it'd be just like the NFL or the MLB or the NBA losing their, sort of primacy.
With that being said, and Jay Monahan has come under a lot of scrutiny, a lot of criticism, PGA Tour commissioner. Is it something where Tiger, should Tiger jump in? Should Tiger be more of a role in this? He's never been one to really be very politically active, be outspoken, but is he seeing like the writing on the wall that he needs to kind of maybe be part of this solution?
Well, I would say Tiger in the past has definitely stayed away from anything too controversial or anything that involves a lot of decision making by the tour. He has jumped into this, I think, more fully than he's ever jumped in. And I think people say, well, it's selfish because he has the 82, career victories, and that's his legacy. Not just that, obviously the majors as well.
Right.
But as far as his tie to the PGA Tour, he wants that to remain valuable in people's mind. Okay, I'm sure there's some of that, but I honestly believe, he played for the, I think the intrinsic joy of golf early on, especially. But he played to be the very best against the very best in a meritocracy. That's how he thinks golf should be tested. There shouldn't be guaranteed money. The conditions should be tough. There should be cuts.
Right.
There should be all these things that test you. And if you emerge from that as the best, then you're the best legitimately. And that's what, separates the best from the others. And he feels like, you don't want to lose that. That's what the PGA Tour sells. He's not talking about being a salesman for the PGA Tour, but PGA Tour sells. We have the best players on the best courses under the toughest conditions week after week after week. That's the highest form of golf, except for the majors. And, the majors and the PGA Tour are intertwined quite closely. So I think he feels like he's going to fight hard for the PGA Tour, get on that board, which he's done now, and he's going to have a big voice. And the thing about, I mean, he's espousing a point of view that a lot of players might have that don't have the weight. When he says it, because he is the model for, what they most respect, the guy that could really do it under the gun and do it at the highest level in the biggest moments, he has weight. Even if you disagree with him, it's like, wow.
He's the E.F. Hutton.
Yeah, they listen. And exactly. And if Tiger's doing it, I want to be like Tiger if I'm a golf pro, if I'm a tour player. I want to, I don't want to have to say, I compromised, I took the money. However, reality, bites. And all of a sudden, that money's so big. And obviously people, after a while, understand probably their ceiling. And if the ceiling's not going to be among the greatest, that live money is very tempting.
Yeah, for sure. Let me ask you this. I mean, in light of what's going on as we record this, it's the end of October 2023, what's going on in the Middle East, will that have any impact on LIV with the Saudi connection there?
I'm not sure.
Even though they're not directly involved.
Yeah, Saudi seems neutral. I mean, everybody's talking about Iran now as being the big threat, but they're right next to each other. And yeah, if that place becomes, it already has a kind of a powder keg, but if it expands, gosh, I'm not I don't know geopolitics that well, but I'm listening and watching, and that area is so concentrated, that could have, I guess, some effect. But I guess, also the LIV model is global. I mean, they play all over the world. So while they want to be in Saudi, I think the ultimate goal from the Vision 2030, which is MBS's sort of, idea about how to bring Saudi Arabia up into the modern world as much as possible, with as much power as possible, is golf is a conduit to that. It's a connector to powerful people. It sort of legitimizes your country as part of the power structure.
Sure.
And they are powerful, obviously, but they also want to be legitimized culturally. And of course, the sports washing thing is a real thing. And he's been interviewed and said, yeah, okay, I'm sports washing, but if my GMP, whatever they call it, goes up 1% every year, it's worth it.
Right.
It's worth the criticism.
Maybe a story or two from 2023 that were your favorites?
Oh, gosh. Let's see. I got to go back now. It's funny how I can remember 1968 very well. But, I was very interested in Scotty Scheffler's evolution and issues with his putting. And because I really think he is the most gifted player out there. I don't know about the most gifted, but the most accomplished all-around golfer. Yeah. And then to watch his putting, which had always been pretty good as he's risen in the last couple of years, suddenly kind of desert him. It's sort of the, I'm not saying he's finished by any means, of course not, but I'm just saying it's sort of the golfer's nightmare that, things can disappear and you don't know, sometimes they never regain. I know, I'm going back to my own, kind of dating myself, my own era, but, talking to Johnny Miller a lot, and Johnny Miller was incredible, a lot like Scotty, tee to green, always was a little shaky with the putter once he became a pro. He had been a great putter through boyhood and even in college. He told me that at BYU they had something, when he was at BYU, that was testing the golfers. It was like a laser, kind of a new innovation at that time. Where are you aiming? And he said, Johnny, you consistently aim about 2 inches left. And he goes, you should correct that. So he started aiming, squaring up, could never putt as well again. So it's, these things that are innate to you, sometimes you mess with them and you can actually lose your gift. Sure. So anyway, I just find that interesting. But, the top of the game, I mean, I think Hovland's rise is interesting because of his attitude and the way he's improved. If you can be a great improver on tour, steadily improve, you are on the side of the long game and what's going to happen in terms of your career being really successful. I think of Vijay Singh was a continual improver. Tom Kite was a continual improver. Tiger Woods, that was his goal.
Vijay practices all the time.
He always practiced. I mean, he had some weaknesses, and he came up, from Fiji. He had some holes in his game from the way he developed. Yeah. Tiger didn't have many holes in his game. He was so relentlessly dedicated to improvement, even the stuff that was great. So he's a model too. But I think, and most of these guys who are at the top right now, Tiger was their model. Whether it's Jordan Spieth, any of these guys, Justin Thomas, they all grew up with him. And so I think Victor's following the Tiger, playbook, and he could be really something special. I mean, John Rahm is explosive and competitive and really gifted. Rory, I thought the way Rory played at the Ryder Cup, it just sort of reminded me of what he's capable of. I mean, he's got the record, but he hasn't really, I don't think, put it together the last 4 or 5 years to his satisfaction.
Yeah.
And maybe he's going to do that. So
maybe he's spending too much time doing PR for
Well,
the PGA Tour, and mentally maybe is a little distracted.
he backed off from that. At first,
Yeah.
he said, it kind of gave me a mission. It focused me and motivated me to want to win tournaments and show. And I remember when he won his 21st, he goes, now I've passed that other guy, meaning Greg Norman.
Right.
But then he did seem pretty tired and exhausted, and he did back off, and he kind of handed off the ball to being the lead spokesman, so to speak. And, I think Jay Monahan ultimately has to do that himself.
Right. You mentioned the Ryder Cup. Were you over there?
Yes.
I'm sure you probably were.
Oh, no, yeah, it was wonderful to go to Rome. No, it was it was great. I'd never been.
I'm sure the food was great. The golf, not so much for the Americans, especially.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, go ahead. No,
you're going to tell a food story. Go ahead.
No, your story. I mean, I just didn't pass up one pizza. I didn't pass up one pot. I mean, but it was. I just wanted to see what the mystique is of the Italian food. I love Italian food. My wife's Italian, but it is different. I overdid it, but it was fun. I kind of immersed and got the whole experience.
But I think what the average viewer, I think, saw was that the Europeans were connected. They were about nation, team. You hear the stories about, the guys didn't want to wear the hat because they didn't get paid. And, should have Koepka made the team or not? I mean, there seemed to be disjointed and there wasn't a lot of unity there. What was it like behind the scenes? How did they react when the cameras weren't on?
Well, you don't really have a lot of access at the Ryder Cup, and that's as the Ryder Cup has evolved, they have kept the situation in the team rooms more and more private. Because they don't need it. They don't need to expose themselves to get attention. They have more attention than they want. They want to stay in that real sealed environment and try to enjoy it. Number one, have fun with each other, but also I guess stay as focused as possible, not be distracted. Dinners, all these things. I sort of feel like sometimes they overdo the effect of that. I mean, Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, all those guys, they did that effortlessly as part of the job. But now it's okay. Media is very much a compartmentalized situation. You're in, you're out, you get out of there. So I could just read what you were reading. Maybe it was in person or not on television. But I thought, starting with Luke Donald, they just had a sense of mission. They just had a focus. They just had a look. It's very intangible. They were not getting distracted with anything other than we are here, and historically this means so much to us. It may not mean the same that it used to mean when the European Ryder Cup team was actually saving the European Tour. That was the only money they were really making. And for them, they had to compete and hopefully beat the Americans to give credibility to how good they were.
Yeah.
And at that time, in the 80s and 90s, you had Seve and you had Faldo and you had Lotharball and Ian Woosnam and Sandy Lyle. These guys were Langer. These guys were really carrying the torch for the European Tour, and they all became number one, I think, except maybe Sandy didn't make number one. But the point is, they have an extra kind of motivation, and I don't even know if you can replace that. And again, you could be as motivated as possible and still shoot 80. Right, So I mean, there's a mystery to golf anyway. Yeah. But I just felt like they had the edge, and it's very tough to win, as we're learning. Overseas, whether for them to come over here or us to go over there, it's tough. But I did think that the Americans just the team they picked, a lot of them weren't playing that well. There was sort of the bet was they'll
they hadn't played in a while either.
They hadn't played in a while. They weren't, and that I think showed a little bit of the actual bottom line of commitment, being not quite as great as the Europeans. But Justin Thomas was picked based on his record, based on his abilities, but he hasn't been playing well. He played okay. Jordan Spieth didn't play that well. Patrick Cantley was the kind of the flashpoint.
Should Tiger be the captain next time?
I think so. It probably at Bethpage if he wants to be. Yeah, I mean at New York, and he won at Bethpage in 2002 at the U.S. Open.
Interesting, Rory, after the post-Ryder Cup presser, said that we can't wait to do it again in 2025 at Bethpage. I think the New York crowd is probably going to let him know about that. You think in a couple of years?
Of course, yeah. Well, that's part of it. I think he said it turns out one of the hardest things in golf is to win a Ryder Cup away at away venue. And I think he wants the challenge of that now and break that precedent and show even more domination by the Europeans.
Let's bring it back across the big pond and let's talk about a home game next year for the U.S. Open at Pinehurst, number 2. First time in 10 years. It's interesting, when we spoke with Eric Kuster in Paradise in the Pines recently, I was shocked he even said it, because he said it and people think it, 1999, Payne Stewart, iconic, historic, puts, I wouldn't say Pinehurst on the map, but I mean, it just galvanized what Pinehurst is with the U.S. Open, their first one at that time. But then you had Michael Campbell and Martin Keimer. I wouldn't say obscure, but I mean, they would love to see like a Ricky Fowler or Dustin Johnson, a bigger name. What are the possibilities of that? Who would you say, they always do the way too soon rankings after somebody wins a national championship. Way too soon. Who would you kind of say, hey, these guys can maybe play well next summer?
I do feel like, the USGA wants to test the deepest skills of the best players. And so I look at the world ranking, and I think it's pretty legit. And I look at those guys and say, Pinehurst, because of the golf course that it is, it's not necessarily the really old traditional U.S. Open that was really narrow.
Right.
And obviously it's going to be difficult. But that sometimes created winners that weren't necessarily among the considered best players at that time. You had Lou Graham, or I'm not going to knock anybody, but maybe short and straight, Scott Simpson. Now they played great and they deserved it, but the style of the golf course helped them because the longer hitters didn't have the advantage because they couldn't, just drive it with a little bit of an accuracy like they normally do and get away with it. You don't get away with it at U.S. Open, but at Pinehurst, I think the width is it's still punishing if you miss the fairway, but there's enough width that I think aggressive power players don't have the disadvantage they used to have in the U.S. Open, and that's true at the setups. Certainly this year at the LA at LA North. So I think that's the way the USGA is going, and I think it does help the guys at the top of the world ranking. Tiger was better on those kind of courses. Beth Page had a little more width. Torrey Pines had a little more width where he won the U.S. Open. So I feel like. I like Hovland.
Yeah.
I like Scotty Scheffler if he gets together. I like John Rahm. He's won the U.S. Open before. And Rory, I think Rory still has to get over that hump of the Masters, I think taking down his confidence a little, because that's the place he most wants to win to complete the Grand Slam, and he just hasn't performed well there. And I think it's hurt his confidence sometimes in the majors going forward. But, but here's what I would say, and I say this a lot. Any tour player in the top 50 and maybe even the top 125, who's on his game, who has his A game that week, is capable of winning any championship.
Yeah.
Even the majors. Now the majors might be a little harder because they punish weaknesses a little more, and maybe that player, even with his A game, might still have some weaknesses. But in general, I think the field has been brought closer by equipment and by technology and swing knowledge, and all these things that people catch up quickly to the one who's leading. And suddenly there's just a more crowded field at the top. Right now there's more parity in golf, I think, than almost ever.
You mentioned equipment, and the USGA, when they build Golf House Pinehurst, part of that will be the testing center. And USGA very much involved, as you know, with the ball and what's going to happen there. What's the latest on that?
Well, that's supposed to come down, sometime later this year or next year, in terms of whether they want to institute a local rule in which a ball of limited flight that would be restricted in some way, probably not that much, maybe 8 to 10 yards, perhaps a little bit more for the longest hitters, would be used. And personally, I'm in favor of it. I think, but all the players on the PGA Tour almost unanimously are against it. And it's complicated. A lot of them have contracts with the ball companies, and they would lose that. The ball companies are very against it. There's a lot of...
That's a big cost for them. And
well, maybe it is, but to me, it's like, what are we putting forth? What's best for the game, or what's best for the manufacturers?
Right.
I mean, obviously, their profit may... I'm not saying it's going to go down. I don't think that's proven, but they contend it will. I think short-term loss... I mean, I think every business in America almost is regulated by the government in some form. And that those regulations sometimes go against you. That's the cost of doing business, and you just ride it out. I don't think it's going to ruin the game if there's a rollback. Now, a lot of people feel like it will hurt the spirit of the game because it should be one ball, one rule, that's it, no exceptions. And I would say ideally, yes. But the increases in the distance the guys are hitting the ball now at the very top level, I mean, it's become a driver, and it's a cliche, it's become a driver wedge game. I mean, these guys, some of them are carrying 5 wedges. I mean, they don't hit more than 8 or 9 iron, or maybe. I remember one year, and this was 5-6 years ago, so it's probably even more so this way. Dustin Johnson didn't hit more than a 6 iron all year to a par 4. So that's, growing up, I mean, Jack Nicklaus was hitting 4 irons and 5 iron. He was a tremendously long hitter into par 4s all the time. So I think the nature of it's changed, and the challenge of these golf courses, as a result, is not as great as it used to be. And I just want to see the game played at the highest challenge. And I think then you really do see who the best player is, and you see more shots and you see more variety.
It's interesting. I came here in 2018, and COVID hit a couple of years after that. So we get asked all. In fact, I was on a tourism roundtable recently where they still ask the question: are you still seeing the impacts of COVID? Well, COVID was like the best thing that ever happened to the game of golf. I mean, it's created so much demand because of social distancing. People can play golf. The NGF even says the 3 best growth sectors in the game are minorities, women, and youth. Pinehurst is, the demand, not just at Pinehurst, but at Kelly Miller's courses, at Pine Needles, Mid-Pine, Southern Pines Golf Club, Tullamore, Mid-South, everywhere in this market. Stream Song, Bandon Dunes, St. all over the world. You see it. I mean, did you anticipate that when that global pandemic happened, that golf would be as much demand as there is for it now?
Well, it was horrible, the pandemic in so many ways, and we're still feeling it negatively in some ways. But golf has been the benefactor, and I'm happy for golf because I think all golf ever really needed was exposure. Most people, it is hard to break into the game, but if you can get past those initial, and I say hard only in terms of it's a difficult game, it's slow. You're not gonna, you're gonna slow down the players you're playing with. There's a self-consciousness when you first start.
Right.
But if this is the only place you can go that's safe, and you can get through those things easily, and then you get to the good part of the game quite soon, and it becomes a game you love. And so I think it has been a wonderful way for the game to get exposed, to have that sort of forced environment where it's like, well, the only thing I can do is go play golf. And you see how beautiful it is just to walk, just to be out there. People criticize golf for not being good for the environment. And certainly there have been abuses, and water's an issue, but they're the most beautiful parks in the world in some way. I mean, they're fashioned by the incredible landscape artists who are golf architects. Golf, I think it's been a wonderful discovery for a lot of people who never thought they'd ever play golf. And that's grown the game. And then, honestly, I think now it's almost the opposite. It's like you can't get a time sometimes. The parking lots are too full. Right. And I remember that when I was a kid. So it's good. I hope golf rides it out correctly with the economy as far as not gouging. And, they have an opportunity now to offer a lot, but, that may be, you don't want to kill the golden goose.
It's cool here, and you've seen that in the 17 years you've been here, when U.S. Kids comes here for the Teen and World Golf Championships, end of July, beginning of August. It's 2,500 kids from around the world, all 50 states, 36 countries that come here. You see, the seeds of what, the youth that are going to take up this game. Colin Morikawa played here. Scotty Scheffler played in the U.S. Kids. Jordan Spieth played in. A number of PGA Tour players played here in Pinehurst as kids with U.S. Kids. So how encouraging is that when you see that and the younger generations? And I want to say, too, the ones that think golf is cool. It's not so much about the game, so much as the social aspect. I'm on the state golf panel, so one of the older gentlemen said, I saw a picture Pinehurst used of these younger people that were, some were barefoot, they were on the cradle, and some were barefoot, they were holding transfusions, golf clubs, having fun. It was chasing foul photography, was a picture of that. I know exactly the picture you're talking about. So he was wondering, is this who you're marketing to? And it's like, well, to some aspects we are. It's the next generation of golf that see it as a lifestyle, as something fun to do. And also, golf's a great game, with your friends and comrades and things like that. So just talk about how, that next generation, what we're seeing in the game of golf, going from the traditionalist to the more, hey, this is fun, cool, hip thing to do.
Well, I think junior golf has always been based on relaxed accessibility, inexpensive fun. Be with your friends, play. Some kids develop in that and become good golfers. Some at least have golf in their life going forward, but they always have that memory of starting in this wonderful way. And I know that from tour players who grew up in maybe obscure areas, like Mark Kalkovecki grew up in Nebraska, and he had a little 9-hole sand green golf course. And he's not really that old, but that, Nebraska's, in an area where there wasn't a lot of development, and he would play that thing 54 holes a day. And, it cost, I think it was $1, and he just went round and round. And I use him as an example of many, many stories I've heard that. Fred Couples played up in Seattle, and now that was a city, obviously, of a lot of people, but the golf course was just a little 9-hole Jefferson golf course, and he just, he was there when he was 8, 9, 10 years old, playing other sports too, but going round and round, and that's how you get good. So I love the cradle, and the cradle's pretty affordable too, so it's a nice way to get started, and that's not the typical way. I mean, it is a resort, and it's a high-end resort, but the idea that to make the entry easy into golf will, I think, promote the idea of fun. The other thing I'd say is I think kids, because, and I don't say the Golf Channel is key to this, but it's part of it. Visually, they're seeing so much more golf, so much more good golf.
Yeah.
They see good golf swings all the time. They know what a good golf swing looks like. They see it on the internet. They can get better quickly now. And I think it's always more fun to play golf as you play it better. And Pinehurst is a center of good golf as well as being just a place of tourism. It's about where good golfers want to test themselves. And I think the U.S. Kids thing, that's for elite golfers. So to see this area be sort of a center of where really good golfers come to be among each other and to test themselves against each other and to have fun, that's great for the growth of the game. Because that, to me, you get a lifetime golfer when you start them young.
Yeah.
It's hard to start at 25, even though that's still relatively young, and fit it into your life and still have as much immersion that you need to just make it kind of second nature. It's kind of like learning a language.
Yeah.
If you learn it when you're 7, 8 years old, you probably got it for life.
And that's why we're the home of American golf.
Yeah.
You talk about testing yourself. When you go out and play in this area, in the home of American golf, what are your top 3 favorite courses in this area? Maybe we should take Pinehurst out of it because we know that's going to dominate.
Well, I love Pinehurst. I mean,
Yeah.
and number 2 is incredible. And
Right.
it's an all-timer. But to play, for me, I love Mid-Pines. I love Mid-Pine. I love what Kelly Miller's done
Yeah,
with
love
Pine
it.
Needles and the Southern Pines Country Club. I think that, it's also affordable, but it's beautiful in this really throwback 1920s golden era way.
Right.
And especially Mid-Pines is so intimate and it's so walkable, and there's just these moments where you look at down the fairway, like off the 16th tee there, when the sun's setting, it's like, this is a postcard.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of great shots out there. Donald Ross, that integrity of
old
those
school,
shots.
yeah.
It's old school. There's a lot of subtlety. It's really a good golf course on every level. And Kyle Franz's restoration of it was exceptional. So I love Mid-Pine. But North Carolina just has this Piedmont area. It just has a wonderful look to all its courses. I mean, it could be the Knollwood, it could be Midlands. They all have a look, and it's really fun to play golf down here. So I'm not picky, about any of it. I play with Dr. Dempsey a lot, and
Right. Yeah.
we play at Forest Creek. Well, he owns, and he should, he owns the golf environment here, and so it doesn't matter. Honestly, I haven't had a bad golf experience here.
You mentioned Kelly Miller. I didn't know you before this conversation, and Kelly introduced us online. How do you know Kelly?
Well, I just know Kelly through Pine Needles. I mean, I knew Pat McGowan a little bit.
Okay.
We're both from California. I recall a couple of tournaments, junior tournaments, where I played with Pat played. And he, I didn't know him, but he was such a nice guy, and he was one of the best players. I mean, he was Rookie of the Year on the PGA Tour. And Pat hasn't changed. So that friendliness at Pine Needles, that's just part of the culture.
Yeah.
And it started with Peggy Kirk Bell, and Kelly is a wonderful, leader in that regard. I mean, he's a great representative for the resort, and he's renowned nationally. When he goes places, whether he's winning club championship at Seminole or at Pine Valley.
Yeah, he loves to go to Seminole.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's where the power structure is. That's
you're right.
That's where the power elite in golf are,
Yeah.
and Kelly's one of those guys. So I admire what Kelly's done, and for him to focus and stay true to this area and just keep building it up gradually and progressively and now dramatically. That's how I know Kelly.
And he's our board chairman with the CVB, and Tom Pashley is former chairman, but have those two voices for the game of golf in this destination is huge. I'd like to ask this question, especially as a resident of Moore County, before we say goodbye. You ate a lot of good food in Italy. What about Moore County? What are your 3 maybe top favorite restaurants to try and recommend?
Well, we limit it because we have a dog that we love, and we like bringing her to the restaurants.
Okay.
So the comfortable place, the Ironwood's been great for that.
Uh-huh.
And the Drum and Quill, we go those two.
Kevin Drum's a great guy?
He's a great guy. And I knew his dad. And Bob Jr. looks just like his dad. It's unbelievable. But I don't want to single anything out. There's a lot of great restaurants here.
Yeah.
I've had, we try not to eat out as often, just because of, the waistline and all that. But
I hear you there.
But it's tremendous, and now I have a greater. Probably go to Vito's a little more and try the pizza and compare it to Rome.
Okay. And Red's Corner is a great pet-friendly place to go as well. I see all kinds of dogs there all the time. So
okay, thanks.
should check that out on the southern end of the Southern Pines. I got to tell you, we could spend a couple hours, but I appreciate, and it's an honor to have your Jaime Diaz from Golf Channel. Much accolades after 40 years in golf. Continue the great job. Keep Brandel in line, and I'm sure you will. And thanks so much.
It was a privilege. Thanks a lot, Phil. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
If you want to learn more about tourism here in Moore County, go to homeofgolf.com. If you want to watch these videos and all our videos, go to Home of American Golf on YouTube. And if you like this podcast, search Paradise in the Pines and your favorite podcatcher. For Jaime Diaz, I'm Phil Wurz. We'll see you next time.
He looks happy.
Here's just some music out.
I couldn't think of restaurants.
Oh, it's okay.